All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Small World Podcast. Great to have you guys here today. And I've got a special guest. My friend Connor here has a very different story as a tech founder. And the thing that I want to emphasize is for the people in the tech world, a lot of you might know the tech to farm pipeline. Essentially, you work in tech for so long that you just want nothing to do with it. So you move and start your own farm. Connor is the rare other way around, where he started on a farm and then went into tech. A couple other cool things about Connor, just to make everyone else here listening feel a little bad about themselves. He started college at 13 because he decided that school was way too easy and he should rather educate himself. And oh, by the way, he's also building Hyperspell, which I'm going to let Connor talk a little bit more about that. Connor, thank you so much for joining us, and please tell us about Hyperspell.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Nikita. I'm excited for the conversation. Yeah, Hyperspell is the context layer for AI agents. And so we connect to systems of record like Gmail, Notion, Slack, and Google Drive, extract all the data from them, used to create memories and context stocks that agents can then use to complete work.
Awesome. And I want to start with this because this might not be obvious for everyone, but how come agents don't have memory right now?
It's a great question. So, how LLMs work is you send them text and they send text as a response via the API call. How things like ChatGPT and other tools handle it is that they will basically take the conversation and put it into the context window. And so every time they're sending that call back, they're sending back all the conversation that's happened so far. So the model itself is actually not changing at all. And the big problem is that if you think about your organization, your company, the models don't know what's in your email. They don't know what's in your Slack. They have no idea what's in your docs. And they have no way of retaining information over time. And so, what the problem that we realized was, the models they're smarter than ever. They're acing, international olympiad tests. They'll pass the bar exam. They can go to law school and med school and whatever, but they don't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. And they certainly have no idea about the customer that you're talking to. And so the reason that we founded Hyperspell was to solve this problem. LLMs are stateless and it's time to give them state.
So let's go into how you came to this problem in the first place. I believe you were starting with another company, and I want to take a quick pause here and say thank you so much for putting so much information out on the internet. You are by far the easiest and most interesting founder to research so far that I've had on the podcast because you do wear a lot of your journey on your shoulder and you put it out in the social media. So I'm going to stop here and say, everyone, in the description below Connor's information. Please check him out. But yes, anyway, sorry. Back to the question. Essentially, how did you come to realize this was a problem?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, I think it's important to put things out there and to be authentic and real. I did not grow up in Silicon Valley. I grew up in a tiny town of 2,000 people on a little suburban farm with chickens and goats and sheep and ducks. And I would look up to people like, Zuck or Alexander Wang and some of these other folks. And it kind of the image that founders have always seems polished and kind of wonderkind vibe. And I never really saw myself in those shoes. And so then when I became a founder, I was like, oh, well, why don't I tell my story? So if you're somebody else that comes from a super non-traditional background and you don't quite fit into the mold, you can see another example of like, here's a story for myself of how I made it and how I got to this point, despite not having a lot of these typical things that most founders have. And for anybody else who's listening to this, you don't need to be like me. It's your own story, but hopefully it resonates with everybody else that you should just embrace whatever story you have, and somebody like you can end up in Silicon Valley. In terms of the problem that we're solving, so we originally were building our own agents. So we were building, this is back in 2024, right? So way before OpenClaw and Cloud Code work, we were building something that was kind of like Cowork in some respects. It was an AI agent for product managers. It's like a chief of staff agent. It would find information across your workplace. It would answer questions. It would edit docs, all these different things. And the tools were really early back then. And we found that the most difficult thing about creating this agent wasn't actually the model. Like even back then, the models were pretty good. The most challenging thing was that the agent didn't have context. And so it didn't know who the people were in the company. It would hallucinate things that had nothing to do with how this company actually worked. It would make things up. It didn't know details about customers. And so we spent all this time saying, okay, well, why don't we create this pipeline where we can pull from all the data on the company and, your Gmail, your Slack, your Notion, your Google Drive, everything, and then give that to the agent and then give it memory so it can remember things over time and improve. And that was really hard to do. And we were spending months just building this infrastructure. And then kind of the light bulb went on our head. And my co-founder and I realized, wait a minute, this thing is really, really hard and nobody else is solving it. What if that was our product instead? And we just started selling this. And we started working with a few other startup builders that were building agents as well. And we found it was a problem for them. And that's how Hyperspell was born.
That's awesome, and I love the fact that you didn't have all the answers in the beginning,
Nope.
but you took action, and as you took action, the answers kinda started coming, and the answers were very different from what you originally expected them to be.
Very different. Yeah, I never would have predicted that I would be building infrastructure when we first started. My thinking was, okay, I'll build a product that is related to my background. So, I've been a PM. I want to build tools for PMs, and so I kind of stumbled into it. But I think in a lot of ways, these are the kind of ideas that are the best ideas because they're not obvious from the outside until you've actually experienced the problem firsthand.
Yeah, and everyone who is in the, space absolutely knows that it's a problem, so you don't even have to sell them on it so much.
No, no,
Um
product sells itself. We haven't done any outbound so far. It's all been inbound.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. You mentioned your background a little bit. Let's dive a little more into that. You started out as a consultant, actually, which is what I'll be
Yeah.
doing this summer as well at the same firm that you went to.
Oh,
I heard you didn't like it that much, but I'm curious, what did you take away from that? And
yeah.
if it was a bad experience, it's still an important experience, right?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't a bad experience. I think I learned a lot. I made some incredible friends, met some amazing people. I'm a huge fan of the culture of BCG specifically. I really did like the people I was surrounded by and enjoyed a lot of it. I think the biggest gap is, when you're in consulting, you're giving advice to somebody else, but it's ultimately that other person that is operationalizing it and making it happen. And then you move on to the next project. You never really see the impact. And for me, I'm someone that's very much motivated by impact and I want to see the difference. And so I did a few projects. I think, first of all, at BCG, I didn't know it at the time. It's like Steve Jobs says, the dots all connect looking backwards.
Mm.
I didn't know it at the time, but actually by working inside of like Walmart and Pfizer and some of these huge companies, I learned a lot about how enterprises actually run and saw what a big problem sharing context is internally, which is becoming really valuable now as we're starting to sell to some big enterprises. And the other thing was, I got this opportunity to build tech products for our customers. And so there's this group called BCG Digital Ventures where they build out new products for customers. And that's how I got interested in product management. And so worked on a few projects with customers and built out tools for them and kind of incubated startups internally and then moved from there in tech. And it was a bit of a wild transition when I first moved. A lot of the job of consulting, honestly, is about presentation and polish. Your slides need to look good, and you need to look good, and you need to be well dressed, and how you speak is important, and it's very much part of the brand, right? And part of being a trusted advisor. And I remember my first week into the new job at a startup, my manager came to me. She's like, Connor, I've been hearing some complaints about you, things we need to improve on. I was like, is it my work quality? I've been working super hard and I feel good. And he's like, no, 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 your work is great. You're doing an amazing job. I don't know how to put this to you, but you look too good. You're too polished. You're too well dressed. You speak too articulately, like it's freaking people out. You gotta tone it down. Get rid of all the nice clothes. Like buy some t-shirts. Buy some hoodies. Don't be so polished. Like loosen up a bit. Which was an interesting experience to try to kind of transition and move to the other direction. But yeah, I think I learned a lot from consulting. Definitely glad I did it. It was a great experience. And it was also great to then move to actually building things and like getting my hands dirty instead of just giving advice.
So I want to pull on the thread of, the difference in culture in like startup world versus,
Very
the
different.
corporate world, right? First of all, I want to say I feel like you're doing a great job adjusting to the startup world.
Right.
And this is where I'm going to talk about the hats a little bit.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Single until
single
Series B.
until Series B. Um, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's a pretty funny story in itself.
Yeah. Well, I think, I got to San Francisco at the beginning of 2024. And I really, I had been thinking about building a company for a long time. I had worked for some incredible founders. I was really inspired at, Checker and Pave and some of the other places I'd worked. And I saw this opportunity happening with AI. At that point, ChatGPT had come out a few months earlier. And there was just this huge wave of excitement and enthusiasm, and I saw all these opportunities happening. And so I started working on it, and I found that there's a lot of people that have questions about your personal life, and it's like, oh, Connor, you've been here for a few months. You seem like a social guy. Like, are you dating anybody? Why are you dating? And I said, I'm actually, I want to focus on my company right now. I think I want to stay single. And then the response from friends was like, "Oh, well, you can't stay single forever. At some point, you're gonna have to, settle down." I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna stay single until Series B, because Series B is the time where that's like the inflection point of the company. And once you reach Series B, you have a very high likelihood of an exit. You can become profitable. Your company's kind of made it, but this early time when you're pre-seed, seed until Series B, where like functionally your company is dead, right? If you don't work hard enough and tackle it, your company is going to go to zero. And I was like, I think I want to take the next, I moved to San Francisco to build this company. I want to take the next 4 or 5 years and just lock in and have this be the main thing in my life.
I love that.
So yeah, I think it resonated with some other people. And so started off just starting to be something I said. And then I found actually there are a lot of other founders that feel the same way, and a lot of people that are putting personal life on hold for their company. And so creating the hat was a bit of a way for us to, claim an identity and be proud that we're locked in instead of feeling embarrassed about it.
And it's funny you mentioned identity because I wore this hat over the weekend, and
Yeah.
you can tell, like, right away if someone looks at the hat and they're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Right.
They've never been in the scene, and then it's like an if you know, you know
If
type of
you
thing.
know, you know. Exactly.
I had a couple
Yeah.
people be like, "That's the funniest shit I've ever seen."
Yeah, I think it resonates, right? Because it's on one level, it's like a memeable line, but it's also true. It captures something that's real, right? And most, not all, but many, many, many of the best founders I know are like not actively dating. They're not partying. They're not drinking. They're not going out. They're focused on everything in life. And I think you should be proud of that.
And this echoes a lot of what previous founders have said. And this was a bit of a shock to me in the beginning when I was first interviewing founders and I said, "Hey, what do you guys do for fun?" And they're like, "Oh
Fun.
man." And they're like, "I don't know. Like I went to the gym last week for like an hour."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I do 3 things now. I eat meals, I work, and I work out, and then maybe I sleep, and that's it. Like, fun. What is fun? Fun is like co-hosting a hackathon with your friends, that's fun. Um, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. And I think all these people that are like, "Oh, you're just a grind set, bro, blah blah. You're not enjoying life. You're not having fun." Like, look, I lived in New York for years. Like, I've traveled. I lived abroad. I've had a lot of life experiences before this, and those times were great. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, "Hey, for this chapter of my life, these next 4 or 5 years, I want to be all in on one thing." And I think if you look at most of the people that have changed the world, they weren't splitting their time across a bunch of different stuff. They picked one thing that they want to be super focused on. They went all in on it. And I think that's something we should celebrate.
And 2 points on this. The first is, you know, you took time in your career to figure out what you wanted to do before you committed to this, right?
Yeah,
You worked
absolutely.
at BCG, you worked at as a PM at different companies.
Yep.
So that's important there. It's not like you launched into this at 20 years old, which I feel like a lot of people nowadays feel like they kind of have to,
They
right?
have
You
to.
see a
Yeah.
lot of young people starting companies, getting into Y Combinator, getting funded, and you're like, well, for fuck's sake, right? There was America, fucking, they're billionaires now. That's a 1 in a billion chance, though. The other thing that I find really interesting too, though, is a lot of people when they hear like, oh, you need to focus on one thing, that sounds really terrible to them. If that's terrible to you and you're listening to this and you're like, I would hate to just do a startup for 4 years and nothing else, that's probably a gut check and probably tells you maybe it's not for you.
Probably shouldn't do it. Like, not everybody needs to be a founder, and there's look, there's people on my team that are like one of the, there's a member of my team who's very actively dating and has a great love life and social life. And that's great. I'm happy for him. Like he doesn't need to make the same pact that I make. I think it's a very personal decision. But I think for me, I was just like, hey, this is something I want to do in life and I want to do it now. It's so much harder to go all in on a startup when you have a family and when you have kids and like all these things take work, right? To be saving for a house, to be planning a wedding, to be like relationships take a lot of work. And I'm very much like, you should either go all in or not do it. And if I had a serious partner right now, I don't think I would be able to give that person what they need, right? In order to maintain a great relationship. So I'd rather not half-ass it. At some point in my life, I'll want a serious relationship, and I'll go all in on that. Um, but it's not right now.
I love it. And to connect a little personally, oh, lost you for a sec.
Exactly. Yeah.
To connect, because this actually makes me really happy that you're saying that and really validates what I tell a lot of my podcast guests, because I get this question more often than you might think. Why aren't you a founder? Right.
Right.
And the answer is, well, I'm not ready to give everything else up. I have a
Yeah.
girlfriend. I really like my girlfriend. I really like playing golf. I'm going to BCG in the summer. I love doing my podcast and I love going to school. And I have 20 other things that I'm just super interested in. Right. It is what it is. But I already know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask it anyway, because this is a good litmus test for other founders doing this. Do you ever wake up and say, fuck, I don't want to do this or I'm bored of this?
Never.
Exactly.
Never. Absolutely not. No, never. And by the way, I think it's like my co-founder's married, he has a kid. He already had that coming into this company. So that's fine. It's like it's already a stable layer. His wife was incredibly supportive. It's if you have that like Mark Zuckerberg, he was already dating Priscilla when he started Facebook. That's great. I think that's fantastic. I think those folks are some of the most locked in because they're not distracting themselves with actively dating and trying to find that person. But my saying is, look, if you start the company and you don't already have a long-term partner that you've been with for years, don't try to find love while you're trying to find PMF. Like those don't do that at the same time. That's not a good idea. Yeah, look, I love what we're doing. I really enjoy it. Even when it's hard, I feel so alive every day. And I think there's never been a day when I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, I get so motivated by just seeing the things that we've shipped and hearing the impact with customers and building things. And, even in the moments where like I was living in a closet in a hacker house and we gotten rejected from YC a bunch of times and we had no revenue and no customers and, just watching the money in our bank accounts going down every month. Even in those moments, I loved it. 'Cause I felt so alive, and the stakes feel real in a way where working at a company, they never really felt real in the same way, and so, um, yeah, I think it's a personal decision. Nobody should feel pressure to found a startup. Like, you should do it because you have no other choice, and you feel like there's no other option for you.
I love it. And I can see the passion like emanating from you as you say that. Let's go into one of the very interesting things of running your own company, and that's hiring people.
Yeah.
You have an interesting way of hiring people that I read about. Can you tell me a little bit about how you have agents do the interviews for the people who built them?
Yeah, of course. So we've announced this and we're going live with it in 2 weeks. We came up with this realization. We were trying to redesign our hiring process and we were like, oh, well, how do you do coding interviews now? Everybody's using Cloud Code anyways. And how do you do behavioral interviews? Like people can just have, Cluely style, you could just have answers to every behavioral interview question. And like the person is basically a conduit for the agents. And we were like, well, this seems kind of silly. The way that you have impact right now as a person is through your agents, right? Like you as an engineer, you are achieving impact through Cloud Code. As a go-to-market person, you're achieving impacts through your go-to-market agents. So what if instead of interviewing the human behind the agent, we interview the agent instead? And we made that the primary metric for how we determine how to bring folks in. Yeah, we have a series of, it's both technical questions, then also behavioral questions. And there's two options. You can either bring your own OpenClaw or, other agent harness that you're using, Cloud Code, other tools. Or you can, you can build an agent. We're partnering with a customer of ours called SuperMe that connects all your data. So people saw this post and thought, oh, it's not real. It's like, no, this is very real. We are launching in 2 weeks. We have a spec built out. And I think this is the way a lot of hiring is going to happen in the future.
Would you ever consider kind of selling the infrastructure that you built to do this hiring to other companies? Because I feel like other companies would love this too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not our primary bread and butter. We have a different, but it is funny. Like along the way, I feel like at Hyperspell, we keep like the way we operate is we see a problem and we solve it almost from first principles for ourselves. We're like, well, it should be this way. Why don't we solve it?
Mm,
And then along the way, we keep creating products that other people could use. I mean, I'll give you another example. Like, we ran into one of the biggest first decisions you have to make as a company is deciding a name for your company.
mm,
And we were just kind of vibe picking a name. Like our original name was Echo AI, and we picked the name Echo AI. And it's a great name, but there are 5 other companies named Echo AI. like, and so we were competing on SEO. It was so hard to get people to notice us. And by the way, one of those companies is like a Series B company that has raised hundreds of millions, and we had to keep correcting people. It was just hurting us in every way. And so then when we pivoted and discovered this bigger opportunity, we said, okay, uh, I want to approach this name thing from scratch. Instead of just vibe picking a name, what if we had agents pick the name for us?
mm,
And so we had one agent, it generated 10,000 different names. And then we had another agent that would go through and search every one of those names and see what the SEO was. Are there any competitive companies? It would see, like, has anybody else trademarked it? Legally, can we use it? And then a third agent would search the .ai and the .com and see if they're available, what the price was. And out of this massive list, we got 5 or so names. And we picked the name Hyperspell because there was not a single company that had that name. We could completely own the SEO because no one else was fighting for it. We bought hyperspell.com for $3,000 and we got the .ai as well for $200, which for anybody who's tried to buy domain names, it is like unheard of to buy a
mm.
domain name for less than, especially a domain name like that for like less than 100K. And it's been a huge asset for us. So I think that's another example of like a bunch of people have come to us and said, hey, you should productize that. Like, you should sell that. That could be another side business along the way. Um, I think that I want to stay pretty focused on our core product, but look, if somebody else wants to productize it, or maybe we'll make it available for free or, open source it. We're more than happy to let people use it. And by the way, our customer SuperMe is probably going to productize this and make it part of their product. So if we can help them out, we're more than happy to do that.
Interesting. And I am going to say too, this reminds me a lot of the Daedalus Lab episode that came out before this one.
Yep.
It's not released yet as of this recording. I
Cool.
think you know what I'm talking about though, the ATM.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you guys, I'm just gonna say, haven't listened to that episode, go listen to that
No, I
because
haven't
what
yet.
Connor is saying is like very similar to or very related, I should say.
Nice. I'm excited to listen to it and hear about the ATM.
Yeah. Kathy's killing it. Okay. So I want to ask a question that I hope isn't too uncomfortable, but something that
Sure.
I know you've thought about. What happens when ChatGPT gives their agents memory?
Well, they already did.
Okay.
They already there's already memory. There's already connectors built into Claude, and where you can connect it to your Gmail and your Notion, and your Slack, and that's great. I love it because the moment people experience something like that, and the big lab ship something, then everybody wants that. But they're like, oh, but I want it with my own agents, or I want it in my own framework. I want it specifically for my company, or I don't trust the big labs. I want to use it on my own. And I think you could see this with everything. Like, remember when OpenAI came out with text to speech in 2023, and then everybody said, "Oh, 11 Labs is dead. They're toast." 11 Labs is crushing it. Right? They are doing better than ever, and they were supercharged by OpenAI releasing that. And I think the same thing with Claude Cowork. Like, Claude Cowork is coming out, and now a bunch of other people are shipping their own versions of Cowork, but for a specific use case or a specific protocol. Same thing with OpenClaw. So no, I think it's fantastic. I'm glad that ChatGPT has memory. I hope they continue to add it to it. What we see though is all the big companies in the world do not want to be reliant on a single model provider ecosystem because look, I mean, Anthropic had an outage last week. Imagine if your entire company ran on Anthropic
Yeah.
and you had an outage. It's like decapitating all your employees at once. You need to be able to switch between models at will. And if you have your entire company running on one of these models, you can't trust that it's always going to be up and available. Same thing, there's been issues with the OpenAI. It's not Anthropic specifically, but there have been issues with the APIs for all these models, and businesses want to protect their own data. And so I think it's great. I hope the big labs continue shipping things. The head of product for OpenAI is one of our investors. We have investors from Anthropic, DeepMind, XAI, and OpenAI. And I think part of the reason that they all invested is because, yeah, they just try to get the hat trick of all the labs covered. But I think part of the reason that they invested is because they know that this is not something that they are going to tackle in their roadmap. Certainly the head of product for OpenAI would know if it was on their roadmap.
I'm sure they would. And quite the flex there to just drop all those names. That was very cool. Okay.
Reality.
Sorry, what was it?
Yeah. It's the reality. So, happy to have them on board.
I love it. I want to talk a little bit more about hosting events. We touched on it a little bit, but you've hosted hackathons, meetups. That is actually where we met last week. Um, why do you do that? What joy does it bring you, and what have you seen? Maybe I guess the question would be, what's the coolest thing that's come out of it?
Yeah. So I have this strong belief that it's getting easier and easier and easier to build product, which is a great thing for everyone involved. We're building something we call a software factory where you can go straight from a customer ticket to working code. And look, I think our product is going to look totally different 6 months from now than it does today. We might need to throw out all the code and have it completely revamped. Now, the interesting thing about that, though, is okay, so that is no longer a differentiator. Just the product that you have already shipped is not a differentiator more. Why do we buy from people at all? And I think the reason that you buy from humans at all is because you want someone that is ultimately on the hook for the software that you have and for delivering on it. And you want to know there's a person you can trust on the other side of the code because the code is going to change. It's going to, there's agents that are writing code, the product is changing, whatever. I want to know that if I'm buying something from Nikita, that I can trust Nikita. And so I think that in-person events, connecting with people in person, building an authentic brand, creating trust is actually more important than it has ever been before. You cannot skate by just having a great product. I think people need to trust you and they need to know you and they need to see you firsthand. And so it's kind of atypical for an infrastructure product to be this heavy on in-person events. But I think a huge piece of it is because we want to foster a community. We want to build relationships with our customers. And we want them to know that we will be up at 3 a.m. debugging things with them, that we will do whatever it takes to help get them live, that we are there to support them, and that we put them first. And events are one way to help communicate that.
I love that. And not saying that this is going to happen at all, but there's obviously a reality that stuff doesn't work out. And if you need to start another company or you go back to it and you create a different startup, those are connections you built that are super valuable that no one else has. And that gives you a huge advantage, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think um, Pitbull said this, there's no losing, only when learning, right? Like winning and losing are states of mind, right? For example, my brother had a company, it was doing stable coins, and they were building it in 2021, and then they were building stable coins for enterprise, and then FTX happened, and then like no enterprises wanted to touch crypto, and so it completely killed the business. Like the revenue went to zero overnight. He had to shut the company down, and he has zero regrets. He didn't lose anything. One of his investors was one of the founders of Plaid, and he gave him a job immediately and responded to an investor update like, "Oh, we'd love to hire you. My brother works at Plaid now." And he got some amazing connections through it. He met some amazing people. You learn so much. I think again, it depends on the kind of person you are because like I really enjoy this. I really enjoy the grind. I'm making a lot of sacrifices in my personal life to do this, which I think is important and matters for me. And so to me, I feel like it's 100% worth it, even if the company doesn't work out, because there's going to be another company. You could start another one, right? You keep going. It's never over until
No
you
limit.
decide it's over, right? I could have, even if this company doesn't work out, I'm going to start another one. And if that doesn't work out, I'm going to start another one. And I am not going to stop until I build $1 trillion company one way or another. And look, as long as if you behaved honorably and responsibly and were a good steward of capital and worked really hard and did the best, like your investors will probably back you a second time too. Second time founders often get with a failed first startup often get funded much more easily. So I think it just is something that you need to decide. Like, if you are the kind of person that really wants to have an impact in the world and you're not going to stop, like, getting the capital is the easy part. It's more of a like having the force of will to keep doing this until it works is the thing that really matters. And look, I mean, like, I spent months sleeping in a closet in a hacker house to get to this point and got rejected from YC over and over again. Like, at this point, there's nothing that can face me, dude. Like, no matter what happens, we're gonna keep going.
Love that. I really do. I want to give you one hot take from my point of view. This is
Okay.
my personal hot take. You can evaluate it. Then we'll do a couple of speed questions and call it a day. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. My hot take is that we are as close to AGI as we were 5 years ago. And
Okay.
my logic there is, and I always like to use this example because I think anyone can follow along. If you had no idea what a fire truck was, and I kept showing you pictures of fire trucks, how many pictures would I have to show you till you knew what a fire truck was? 5, 10 ish, as a human. AI needs to see like a million of them. And they actually had a problem when they were training AI to see what a fire truck was, because if there was no fire hydrant next to the fire truck, AI would not be able to recognize the fire truck itself. So, as good as LLMs have gotten to pattern recognition, they're not necessarily like able to consciously think. And even though we've seen a lot of progress there, I would say overall, in terms of AGI, we haven't gotten any closer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think language models are a dead end when it comes to AI. I think we've always
Mm,
kind of seen that. The if you look at the history of AI, I mean, people have been trying to work on AI since like the 30s, potentially earlier. If you look at some of the mechanical work that they were doing in the Industrial Revolution, people have been trying to do this for a long time, and what you see is it's not a continual graph upwards. Like, you try something that starts working, it takes you to a point, and then there's a ceiling for it, and then you kind of explore, and then you find something else, and that takes you up, and then there's a ceiling, and then you keep going. Like, it's never been just a smooth trajectory. I mean, remember when AlphaGo and AlphaZero and Deep Blue before that, and um all of these things are we're getting closer, but and there was even before ChatGPT, there were diffusion models, right? Transformer-based diffusion models that did well. We're getting closer, but there's always it's like an asymptote. There's a receding horizon. Um, I think that you can take language models and get to something that does really useful work with a combination of like agent harnesses, plus memory, plus tool use, and all these other things outside the model that feels like AGI. But is it AGI in terms of the model itself? No, it's not. It's not. And I think we need more research breakthroughs to get there. I was chatting with a friend the other day, and we were talking about that like what you need is a large action model or large decision model where rather than you still have the embeddings, but rather than the output being tokens representing text, your output is tokens that represent decisions, where
mm.
you could go in and train it on all the decisions that were made in a company and then fine tune it based off of that, and its output is like, okay, we have a customer that wants a renewal, should we do the renewal or not? Instead of it generating language that says yes and here's why, it could just generate a decision that's natively included as a token. And so that's one option. I think there's going to be a lot of new types of models that are included. Um, but I also wonder, does it matter? Like, if the model is doing work and the model is being economically valued, I kind of don't care whether it's just a complex harness with in some ways, very dumb model at the center. And so I think from our perspectives as builders, yeah, I 100% agree with you. We need more technological breakthroughs, more research breakthroughs. At the same time, I think we can get really, really, really far, even if there's no progress from where we are today.
I mean, we have really. Honestly, we've gotten super far. I would say to answer your question, I think it does matter because if true AGI is achieved, then there's no point in humans. As long as we're kind of not at that point, there's still a point in humans, which is something as a human I kind of hope happens. But we'll see.
I think that the value of humans is that we are the ones that create meaning. Like, AI doesn't have any goals inherently, right? Like, we are the ones that determine where to point this AGI at. And it's just an optimization problem at the end of the day. And so I think even post AGI, there's still a role for humans. It's just what role we want humans to have.
Fair point. Okay. Connor, it's been a blast. I got a couple of questions to fire at you. I started doing speed questions,
Okay, let's do it.
and then I know you probably have to run. So, favorite startup that you've been tracking recently? I can't.
Oh man, that's a hard question, man. I mean, I love Brew Space just because I think I love audacious ideas and building crazy things, and you can't get much more audacious than a hotel on the moon. And so, big fan of Skylar. I think he's a generational founder, and I love people that are just doing crazy stuff.
He is the most requested person for the podcast. I will say.
He's a legend. I'm happy to intro you. He's
Uh,
awesome.
I would love that.
I'm
Thank you.
also a tiny, tiny, tiny investor in this company. Um,
Nice. That's awesome. Would love the intro. Thank you. Favorite book doesn't have to be business related.
oh my god. These are great questions, man. I It's kind of a pop psychology book. It's not necessarily extremely deep, but I love the core idea of Grit by Angela Duckworth because it's in some ways it's like PG saying do things that don't scale. Her takeaway is like if you just keep doing hard things, then you will succeed. It's not actually about being smart or talented. It's just like going through the pain over and over again and getting past it. And I remember the core message from that book a lot, and I think it informs a lot of how I approach startups.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. One problem that keeps you up at night.
Uh, I mean, there are a million problems that keep me up at night, right? Like running a startup is solving a bunch of tiny problems over and over again. I think the most difficult question in our company is that how much to innovate around the existing technology landscape versus waiting for the tech to catch up to your vision.
Mm,
Um, and it's really, really hard. Like we're working on this thing we call internally the software factory, where we're making it so that you can go end to end the moment a customer gives feedback, all the way to working code and a feature that's shipped for them, all just using agent with no human input. And it's a lot of work to wire together these systems and build in verifiability and testing and all this other stuff. And there is a non-zero chance that 6 months from now, the models just get so good that like Claude Code can one-shot this end to end, and all that work was for nothing. But there's also a chance it won't be, and it might still be useful in the 6 months where we can move faster than everybody else.
yeah.
And so I think that is the most challenging thing of knowing where on that line you want to be. And there's not a right answer. I think every team needs to choose for themselves. But in some ways, being too early can be as big of a problem uh, as being too late. Because if you're too early, you build all the scaffolding around the model and all this other stuff, and then suddenly it's not needed. And then somebody that's more native into the new model format can outrun you because you're held back by your scaffolding. And so the
Yeah.
question of how much scaffolding to build today and when to take it away is, I think, the most. I don't have an easy answer. There's almost never easy answers in that trade off.
That might be the most difficult thing because you're pretty much trying to tell the future. I mean, there was a mic before Microsoft, right?
Even the big labs don't know. Like if you talk to researchers at these big labs, they're also learning new things and discovering new things all as in nobody knows, right? Like we're all kind of feeling around in the dark trying to figure out what's going to happen next.
Awesome. Last question here. Advice for early stage founders or someone who is thinking of starting their own company.
Just get started.
Love it.
Any of this, like, I don't have an idea. I don't have a co-founder. I didn't get an YC. I haven't raised money. I need to wait for XYZ. It's all BS. Like my founder journey started the moment I decided I want to start a company. And at the time, I did not have a co-founder. I hadn't raised money. I didn't have an idea. Like none of this stuff. I think there's this idea that you need to start with an idea first or a co-founder or very well or a problem or whatever. And the reality is like you should just decide you want to start building something on your own and you can move to San Francisco with no connections, not knowing anyone, not having money, not having a co-founder, live in a hacker house. Like there's people who lived in our hacker house and like me, they lived in the closet for months on and didn't pay rent, you know, stayed there for free, did chores around the house to afford staying there for free. in order to be there physically and be in the right place at the right time for luck to strike you. And I think that's the key thing is like, if you want to become a founder, you can start today. All your excuses are invalid and total BS. Just do it and just start making steps, and you will have a lot of false starts along the way, and you will make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of things won't work. But if you just keep pushing, eventually you find something that works. And again, like, I got rejected from YC 6 times, like, between my co-founder and I. Like, I got rejected from my hacker house the first time I applied. I got rejected from On Deck, which is where I actually met my co-founder eventually once I got in. Like, I started another bootstrap company before this. Like, I at one point, we tried to fundraise, and we set out to raise 5 mil, and we raised 500K instead from, like, a very small number of investors. Like, you will make a lot of mistakes along the way, but the key thing is like not seeing it as failure. You just need to keep going, and then eventually you discover the path.
Relating perfectly back to your recommended book called Grit.
Just keep pushing, and eventually something works. It's not that complicated. It's kind of a dumb thing, but like, you can think yourself into being unsuccessful as a founder. You need to think less and do more, and not think too much about, oh, are we building the wrong thing? Is this like, just do stuff, and then eventually something works.
Think less, do more. End of episode. Mic drop. Boom.
All right. Great chatting, man.
All right, Connor, thank you so much.